All right. So just when you thought you were done with landscape and outside scenes, I pull you back in. So we have the one thing that I haven't gone over is using landscape, and that's right over here, this landscape tool. Um, it's phenomenally useful and amazing, and it's basically like the painting, the vertex painting uh, tool on meshes, except you can edit the mesh. You can change things around, and but in order to do that, you still have to set up the shader. Excuse me while I get myself a little coffee. You still have to set up the shader so that you can paint on the scene. And the shader is just slightly different. So once again, I'm going to give you another another image of what the shader looks like. I love wireless headphones. So here is what our shader is going to look like. And this one is, this video is going to be all inside of Unreal, so we don't have to make any meshes or anything. But there's some interesting concepts in here, and I think you'll enjoy it. So again, it starts with coordinates, and it goes through textures. These are the ambient occlusion, and it's for a height map in here. And I think that it doesn't seem to work right if I don't have the ambient occlusion maps in there. So whether they're important or not, I just put them in there superstitiously. And so we're going to have four textures that we can use on these in these terrains. And here's a layer blend, and this is how all of the layers go together. So, and specular, I zeroed that out. So let's get started. Oops. Let's get started on this and see what we can do. So first off, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make a landscape area. And I'm not sure if it's important to keep these guys, keep everything within them. I think it might have to do with post-processing, light, mass, importance, volume, and post-processing volume. Well, we'll just avoid that for now and see what happens. We're going to move this guy out of the way. And then we're also going to create a landscape. So now when you first go into landscape mode, this huge landscape is created. And so of course we don't need all of that. You can make multiple landscapes. First time I started using landscapes was in America's Army, and that was pretty sweet, like I talked about last time with painting on the ground. All right, so let's go over here. We're going to change the section size to 7 quads, and then we'll move it over here. And now we can make that even smaller. We could make the number of components. Let's make it 6 by 6 and see what happens. So that's a little smaller. It's kind of nice. And we'll just have that inside there a little bit. And now we're going to set up, oh no, we have to actually create it. So you can also import it from a file, and I'm going to discuss that at the end of this video. All right, so we have just set it to create that, and we have its own height map here. Here's a brush for changing things around. Now, I've noticed that when I do this, that there are issues with LOD, and LOD, no, it's not over there. So when I go away, go far away, the LOD sets, it goes back like to 0. It's crazy. Max LOD level. So I was setting that to 0. It might be that you don't need it for that. You might need to have it at 0.01. But if you set it to -1, the farther you get away, like any LOD, it gets simpler, but then it removes all of the topology or topography or whatever. Okay, so we are going to import our textures. So these textures over here, there's a height map I was telling you about. These are the textures that I have set up for it, and I have a zip file for it that I'm going to upload on Blackboard. And we're going to take these guys, just select all of these guys. I think one of them I'm not using, and bring it right in there. And it should be importing them. Yep, it is. Get that coffee. Okay, so it's imported it. Now we need to make our material. So we'll go over here. We'll create a material. We'll call it landscape mat. All right, and we will double click on that to bring it up. And here we are. So we start with our basic material. Now we're gonna need on this the layer blend. So if I right click and I type in landscape, we'll see a bunch of the landscape nodes. Out of this, we're going to need landscape layer blend and landscape layer coordinates. So put that one over there. We'll get this one over here. And landscape coordinates. So this is like the texture UVs that we saw with the other one with the vertex painting. Now, in the landscape layer coordinates, typically they seem to need to be scaled up a little bit. So I put them at, I think I did it at 3.5 or maybe 4, I'm not sure which. So I'm just going to increase that to begin with. And the layer blend, we're going to add 4 textures to that. So right here it says 0 elements in the array. We click 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we have 4 in there. And if we open it up, we'll see a bunch of data. So you open up the first one, and in each of these they have a preview weight, and that means, as far as I'm aware, something about which one is in the hierarchy to be previewed first. So typically 0 is the one that is on the top, and the 0 is going to be our rock layer, and that's going to be set at 0, and each of them is going to be LB height blend. And we have that. So our second one, this one is going to be dirt. And they're all going to be LB height blend. And notice each time I do that, it creates the layer and then the name and then height and then the name. And this one will do 0.2. And not sure why, but that's the way everyone seems to do it. And then the third one is going to be dry grass. I'm going to take out that space because, well, later on it needs that gone for some reason. And then the last one is going to be just regular grass. And so all of these are LB height blend. And so the third, this will be 0.5, and this will be 1. All right, so we have all of our guys set. Now we just need to bring in our textures. So our textures over here, I need to see them a little bit better. That's enough. So here's our rock. Our rock layer is going to go up here. And then we have our dirt. And this is our dirt texture with the ambient occlusion. And then this one, which is which? I'm going to look up here and see which one is which. Yeah, this is the one that we want. That's the dry grass. So I select that one. I bring those guys in as dry grass. Now you can also check what the textures are before it actually previews it. If you click on the texture and you look over here, and you'll be able to see it. So there's our dry grass, there's our dirt, dry grass, and regular grass. There. All right, so now we have it in there. And we're also going to add a constant, 0, plug that into the specular like we did before. A lot of these, I'm showing you these kind of a little bit of shortcuts, but I'm not going through everything about normal maps. Um, the only reason normal maps are essential if you're making a game, very vital. But the only reason I'm not going into it is because I'm pretty much presuming everybody knows about them, that they are essentially like glorified bump maps, and they do add a lot of contour to textures and make them look gorgeous. But it's pretty obvious once you understand how these shaders work, how you can incorporate normal maps into them. So you wouldn't be able to get this far in programming if you hadn't if you weren't capable of figuring that out. So I believe in you guys. I always have. All right, so I'm just gonna organize these a little bit, like people used to with the Mac. Just sit there rearranging your icons when you had nothing else to do. Ugh. Yeah, that's what happened. Okay. And so basically we'll take the landscape coordinates. We're just going to uh, plug them in like a Moog synthesizer in each one of these guys. So output of the landscape coordinates into the UVs of the texture sample. Now, the other thing too is that sometimes people will actually they'll use the TGAs with the alpha channel that will have the embedded AO or ambient occlusion in it, and in that case, you won't have the second texture. You'll just take the RGB out, put it into layer rock, and then the RGBA out and put that into the height rock. So that makes it a lot less complicated. And this isn't a complicated shader in the slightest. It's pretty straightforward. So then we just take the RGB out of all of these guys and just one by one plug it right in. So you just have to make sure that the AO goes into the height and not height. Oh my gosh. I've heard just a few people say height. There's no such thing as height. All right, so we have our our rock. We have our dirt. And then we have our dry grass. Oh, duh. Silly me. Why didn't you guys tell me while I was doing that? I was just going on autopilot. All right, and that's it. Oh, nope, it's not. All right, and that's it. Okay, end of video. No, it's not. So we're going to apply it. And that's what it looks like in the shader, which looks pretty bad, but it's going to look a whole lot better in just a second. Save that. Let's move it up here. Okay, so now that we have that, what we're going to do is we're going to look over here. We have our height map, manage, we have paint. So what we want is we want to plug in this landscape material over here because we should have the landscape selected, right? Yes, we do. So I move that right over here, and it will spend a good deal amount of time compiling those shaders. So this will be very frustrating to some of you. Um, and one of the reasons why I actually started this on a new scene is that kind of the more stuff you have in there, the more it'll spend time compiling all these shaders. But we can do a few things while it's doing that. Let's, there we go. Okay, so it starts out and it's black. There we go. Okay, now we're looking at the shaders. So it's still thinking about it. It's still compiling those shaders. But what we do need to do is we need to set these layers up so that they will be used as a weight blended layer. I know there's a lot of weight and height and all that kind of stuff, but this is the way that it's set up. So while it's compiling those layers, we're going to click on that and convert it to a weight blended layer, and then we're going to find where I made that landscape test. So this is where it stores the data for it, and I click OK for that, and that one will be set up, and you can see things are starting to change. And then, oh, and now it's up to 1,000 shaders that it needs to compile. And then I click on landscape text, and that one is set up. You have to give it a unique name there. And you can see that those layers are going in there. By the way, don't follow what I'm doing here. I'm putting all of this inside of one. That's just so that I can show you what's going on with it. And also, I'm skosh lazy at the moment. So landscape text test. Click OK for that. That one, landscape test. All right, so we have that. It's still compiling shaders, so there isn't a whole lot we can do. But while it's doing that, I'm just going to show you a couple little things in here. So while it's doing that, you can select different sections. You can see I have all these sections in here. I can actually delete some of these guys and make the area smaller. So if you wanted to have multiple ones, say like you had a side, you had some meshes going down the middle or something, or you wanted to have multiple little mountains, you want to have a big mountain in the background, you can get rid of all the sections that are not needed. And sculpting, now there's a lot of different settings on this one. The way that it will increase the size. So this is the tool that you'll use going through it, all the different ones. You can smooth something that's already been made, flatten the top of something, you can create a ramp, which is pretty neat. Different kinds of erosion, some different noise. Retopologize is very handy in that if you have some cliffs or some mountains that are getting a little bit on the stretch side, you can click this, and with a large brush you can go around and make sure that UVs don't get too terribly crazy. I haven't used a bunch of the other ones, but you can experiment with them and see how they work out. Other ways of drawing, usually it's on circle. I don't know, it's probably pretty self-explanatory the ways that you can draw with it. So that's how it's the brush, and this is the fall off. And so you can make tips for small edges. Let's see, tip fall off, sharp at the center and smooth at the edge. So there's a lot of different ways. Sharp, linear fall off. So that could make some good cliffs. We're just going to try smooth. We're not going to do anything too terribly fancy. Just waiting for the shaders to finish. And then when we're doing painting, what we'll do is we'll click on the one that we want to paint, and then we'll change the brush size. Probably 300 will be good. No, we're going to want that bigger. And you know, there's a lot of different ways to make mountains. It depends on what kind of thing you're looking for. If you want a small little tiny hill with some rocks on it is one thing. If you want some needles, like really sharp, pointy mountains, I've seen them in Hawaii. They're really kind of funny looking, but they do exist in nature. All right, so it's done it. Let's see if it's going to ask for more shaders. There we go, it's not. Okay, so you see it's kind of like how that mesh shader was. And you might ask, why then would we need to have the mesh shader? And I'm going to explain this while it's still compiling more shaders. The height maps cannot overlap each other, so they can't, if you want something to look very specific, it's very good to just do that right in Maya. Okay, so I think all of them are now done. And the rock, of course, is done. So yeah, so you can do these small little things where you can see just a little bit of the texture in the middle of that. So it's pretty neat. So that's everything flat. Now let's get to actually making some height to this. All right, so sculpt, circle. Okay, let's bring that up. All right, there's a little bit of height. And now if I think what happens if we do, let's do it smaller. Too small. If we go over to from sculpt and down to erosion, you should be able to make some kind of neat variations on what we just created, because most of that was just all was just very smoothed. Some of this erosion can get a little bit not. It can get a little bit erratic. So you, if it's too crazy, you'll want to go back in and smooth that stuff. I'll put it back up and make another little section over here. Bring that up. Give a little more erosion there. And when you have those little crevices in the rock, it does tend to help make it more realistic if you're not using a height map or anything. Okay, so we have some unique variation there. So one of the other things that you can do to actually look at what your terrain looks like, because most of this here is all just one texture, and actually go over to Lit, go to Visualizers, and go to Wireframe on top. And now we can see just a little bit more what's going on there. So there might be some stretching over there. We could go over here to, let's see, retopologize, try to fix that up just a little bit. And there we go. That will take away a little bit of any stretching that might be there. I don't see anything that's too off. All right, so then now we can take, we could do something, and it's totally up to you, your artistic sensibilities, how you want to texture everything. All right, so I added a bunch more here, as you can see, and I also started drawing around the base of it. Basically, you can just color up these guys and just dirty up the sides. You saw how, or you can see at least how very clean the rocks can look. But if you paint with a very low brush, you can actually just dirty them up and get that stuff right in the middle of the cracks, and it looks quite realistic. So over here we have some rocks that have a bit of a plateau on it. We can dirty that up. And if I go into paint, I have all that set. I want to add some dirt in there just a little bit. Put the tool strength really low, so make sure that I don't overload it. And I can mix a whole bunch of these guys together. I can put some of this grass in here, get some green going on. And there's some more stretching over there. So if you see stretching like that, we can go over to sculpt. We can choose retopologize. We should be able to remove a little bit of that stretching. There we go. Looks good. We could add like a little thing at the top where you can hang out and there's like this little green area, whatever. Might be a little on the tacky side, but whatever. Oop, I'm still retopologizing. So one person's tacky is another person's irony or style. As they say in Latin, de gustus non est disputandum. There's no disputing tastes. See, that's what I really like about this, is that you can bring that stuff right up at the base of it. And you can really dirty up that rock. So the other thing you can do, I'll save this to make sure that we have all those changes, is I added in, I brought in some foliage from, some animated foliage from before. Turn that on. Make this about 75. And we can do some painting of grass. It's a little too much. Let's make the density a little bit lower. Also, what would look good on this instead of necessarily just grass is a little bit of some varied grass sizes, also some weeds, things like that, and bushes, what have you. We have a little bit of a area over here that has a little bit of green to it. And anyways, just have fun making your own worlds. So let's see what it looks like we run around. I think the grass might be a little bit on the overly obvious side, but still, it's looking pretty sweet. There's some cool stuff about that. And of course, it's pretty small, but you can have some small rocks like this. All right, so what was I going to do here? I was going to show something else. Ah, yes. Okay, I'm going to show you guys how to import some terrain from a height map. I'm going to save that. Make sure. All right, so let's do the height map stuff. Okay, so for height maps, we have a video, or not a video. We have an image. All right, trying to find it. There we go. So here are a couple height map images. We're going to use this one height map from UE4. Your height maps have to be PNGs, as far as I'm aware. Those are the only ones that will load up, and they have to be grayscale, I believe. That's how they worked for me. So let's just make another one, new landscape. And we can just see how it goes with this, or make it a little smaller. Create. Okay, so to import that height map, we'll go over to height map, or you can do it when you actually create it. Over here, you can do import from file if you right click on the height map. And go over to landscape shading, click on that, open it up. And we have some crazy height map stuff. Now, this one, I wonder, I think Z is the one that we want to change it to. Yes, there we go. Now you can see it actually has something a little bit more manageable. We could even make it smaller if we wanted to, but it's insane. The stuff that you can do with all of this. I'll zoom into this area. Now you'll also notice though that that there are some pretty high peaks over here, and that can get a little. Those can be a little intense, probably a little too much. We can we can try to zoom out. Let's do this. All right, there we go. So now, if we want to fix those peaks that are just a little bit too high, we can go into the sculpt tool. We can go to smooth, and then we can choose a brush size. Make sure it's big enough. Probably I'm going to have to actually grab onto this and pull it all the way up. There we go. Do a fall off. Not a huge fall off. Maybe even smaller than that. And tool strength. Not sure what would be good, but let's try that. Yeah, oop, wow, too much. So we'll probably want that 1. Brush fall off 1. Let's see if that works. There you go. So that smooths it out just a little bit. That's probably too much, but you can definitely see where there are some areas that are not too good. So and then you just go right in and paint the whole thing. You can make your scene all around them. You can the really amazing thing about these height maps is that you can actually get them off of other programs, and you could make your own just out of if you go into Photoshop and you have a thing for fractals. You can, but what's also cool is you can actually take them off of Google Earth. And you can export those, so you can choose whatever kind of thing. You could get kawaii, and you can make use those mountains or something. So there's a lot of things you can do with this program, and that's really the last thing that we're going to do externally. The remainder of the semester, we're going to go for doing internal stuff and some design and some lighting and hopefully some effects of fog and things like that. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in class.